Does it say it's recording?
I don't know, where would it say that? I don't know where
Oh,
it.
it started. Here we go.
Yes,
Nice and trippy, Dave.
yes, yeah.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Today I am chatting to Amanda, who works in our family placement team, but also has lots of experience from working in the adoption support team. And we wanted to feel a bit festive this morning and talk a little bit about Christmas. So welcome, Amanda. Nice to have you along.
Hi, Polly. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I'm wearing my special sparkly hairband. I notice you have not made an effort, but
No, I've not, but you're dazzling enough for the both of us, I think.
good. That's what I'm trying to do. Partly one of the reasons I'm wearing my headband is really so we focus in on just thinking a little bit about Christmas, how it might feel for some of our families, and I just wondered if it might be a good opportunity to share a few stories and tips about some of the Christmas spectacles that we see. You don't have to use the examples from your own family, Amanda, because I know we've all got those Christmas disaster times in the locker.
Yeah, I don't think we've got long enough for that. Yes.
What kind of springs to mind for you when you think about kind of going out to meet with some of your families and talking about this time of year?
I think every year that I forget the issues that will come up at Christmas until I start doing the visits either the end of November, beginning of December, and it's only then every year I forget until I do the visits and I go out and there'll have been a change,
Yeah.
and the parents will be pointing it out. So just probably to give a bit of an example is this time last year, I went out to see a little girl, beginning of December, preschool at nursery though. She had been with her parents since probably the springtime, so quite a while.
Yeah.
So I think we often say to parents, you need to remember how long it is and this is their first Christmas. Whereas actually we forget that as well because, we're going out for 8 months and it feels
everything's looking great.
Yeah, everything's looking great. Feels like the child's been there forever. It is very easy to forget that, and every day is a long day with a child. So I think that's probably what the trigger is for me. I go out, I see a difference. For this particular child, usually really upbeat, really chatty. I wouldn't say compliant, but just really easygoing, laid back.
Yeah.
And actually, as soon as I went to visit in the morning later, as I always have, not dressed yet, so there'd been a bit of drama.
Yeah.
And just
your first clue.
Yeah, totally. Just whole presentation, a bit grumpy looking, which is definitely not a side to that child that I'd seen before. Just, usually just very different. The mum had said, oh, totally off food and just waking up through the night and just a general difference. Every other time I'd visited, dressed for nursery, dressed and quite proud of the uniform and things. So I think it was just then what we did is we then spoke about it. And I think it's just a reminder for us all that there had been a good few Christmases before. I think that particular child had not ever been with the birth family, from hospital discharge right to foster carer, same foster carer. So again, probably what we would say is most straightforward. Yeah. However, it wasn't until actually when I was there and we were speaking it through and then I was driving back as well, that I thought there would have been contacts with birth family.
Yeah.
And you know yourself, when we were in practice teams, when there was a contact at Christmas, we're very good at telling folk to be low key, but we would be going all out, for the kids coming with foster carer, a sibling and birth parents, and we'd go to town on it and it would be quite a big thing. So we're very good at telling folk.
Everyone be trying to make it low key. Special. Yeah,
unless it's us.
20 presents is fine, and do some singing. That'd be really nice. If you're doing a disco, perfect. Yeah, bring some lights.
So, I did remember that, and I did think, I suppose it's really given it thought, and I think it's probably easier for us on the outside as well because they're living it every day, and it can just look like a child has been a bit difficult. There's maybe a change in the behaviour they might put down to other reasons, but when we really sat and thought about it, we're thinking about all the changes. Even already, gymnastics, swimming club, all these things are actually coming to an end. So there's all those parties.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, we associate endings. We always want to give the party.
Yeah.
And even your final contact with birth family. Whereas actually for kids, that's really difficult. And that's not to say that their memories are bad memories, but it's like everyone that, whether you've lost someone the year before, it's just a real reminder. And it doesn't mean to say, you are sad when you're not seeing folk, and that could be about the foster carers and just what Christmas brings up. And even if adopters are trying to keep it fairly low key, it's near impossible. The shops, nurseries, I mean, most children that we work with are so hyper vigilant, and as nursery staff and school staff, there's a real relaxation. So there's less boundaries, less structure, and that then feels a wee bit unsafe. So as well as the memories, whether good, happy, sad, the loss, the grief, you've also got a lack of structure. Kids are told to bring in games. There's a lot more free play that we know that our kids will struggle with.
Yeah.
And especially a first Christmas.
Absolutely.
I always say expect the worst, and anything else is a bonus on that first Christmas. And the nearer, and I know we've discussed this before, Polly, the nearer to Christmas that a child moves.
Absolutely.
Then probably the more extreme you're going to see a real shift and different. And I think it's just, trying to be empathetic, and just the things that folk do when kids move and when things are difficult over the first while. And then we often get into just, living our lives and get into our own routine and stuff that we then aren't maybe not so as mindful of, and just think about their past and what it's been like for them, the losses, what Christmas might trigger.
Yeah, and I think it's that
so many things.
Like you say, it's some of that routine stuff as well, isn't it? I think we often make the same mistakes with school. Why is a child feeling so wobbly after October half term? Well, actually, they've just had a week that's completely different to how they are, and a lot of the children, that we have experience of kind of working with and alongside, really routine is quite important to them. Kind of predictability, knowing what's coming next. And there's something about a first Christmas, like you were saying, they don't know what's coming next. They've never done this before with this family. They've got an understanding of what Christmas maybe is, but they don't know what Christmas looks like with you, with this family setting that they're now in. And it's kind of brings up a lot of emotions, doesn't it? And I think that's something we can probably all relate to, having Christmas with a new in-law or someone joining the family, that it's not an unusual experience. Most people have had a Christmas at some point in their life, haven't they, when it looks a bit different, it feels a bit different, and you've got to kind of work around it. So sometimes it's about bringing that a bit back to the child in amongst all the excitement.
And we do always, it's interesting because we always presume that everybody's Christmas is just like our Christmas. And I've got friends that I was at school with, and it's only maybe lately there's been something in the conversation that you realise that folk do it really differently. I've also got friends who have lost parents, and that at this time of year, for a reason, there's a lot of church services go on. All the crematoriums and stuff do them, and that's for a reason. So it's very difficult, because I think if you're a new parent, no matter what age your child is, that first Christmas, everybody's building up. Even, we'll say it's your first Christmas, all the family are about. And with that, I think I've found this quite a few times. It's interesting when you say, right, what's been different? And for a particular family, I remember speaking to them, and, they've been so busy. And because I've visited for so long, I'm not saying they weren't busy, but there's a lot of, suddenly in 1 week, there's meeting 3 different sets of friends that the child's met before. But there's all that, it's somewhere where, you know, Dobies or wherever, where it's very Christmassy, there's the Christmas music, you know, there's an exchange of gifts going on, there's all that mince pie, everything that will remind children of whatever their memory is. And I suppose that's the thing, that you maybe won't know everything, especially if they were possibly birth family or kinship carers, and they've had so many different Christmases, or even if they've always been in foster care, but they've had contacts. So that would have looked different again. So, you know, no wonder they're anxious when we really think about it. And we don't want to think about it, because Christmas is so nice. It's a wonderful time for children. Our families want to, you know, go overboard.
Make it special.
Gifts. Absolutely. So everything's really heightened. And I think, when I think back to that particular child, that a scene within the space of an hour visit, various highs and lows, and becoming quite unregulated again, which we've not seen for such a long time. And we think, what's that about? But when we really think about it, and we don't want to do that, because, you know, everybody's excited. We've got snow today. Again, that will bring up other memories.
Absolutely.
Do you know, and whether they're good or bad, for anybody that's suffered a loss, Christmas, do you know, it is that time. I mean, it's difficult, and everyone, there's expectations at nursery. You're expected to be upbeat all the time. And it's difficult if you don't feel that way. And of course, as adults, a lot of the time we will put it on. Children aren't able to do that. Do you know? So.
And I think, you know, it's also making me think about some of the stuff that, again, we've talked about lots when we were doing friends and family groups and things like that, about everyone really desperately want a child that's kind of joined a family to feel really welcomed and part of that family and really special. And sometimes what that looks like is that they like overload them with attention. And, you know, we've always done this with our other grandchildren, or we've, you know, we don't want to treat them any differently. And we're like, absolutely, we don't want you to treat them any differently either. But, you know, actually, this is their first Christmas, and they might not be able to take all the stuff and that you would otherwise do. So kind of helping some of our families, help them understand what the wider family picture looks like, and all that kind of tradition that other people are trying to put them on for the right reasons. They're trying to do it from a place of kind of kindness, aren't they, and inclusivity and everything else. But actually, you know, we need to sometimes support our families with a bit of saying, you know, maybe this year keep your family a little bit at arm's length.
But I think what folk sometimes do is hear that as Christmas Day. And I would say that for first Christmas, all of the families I've worked with over the last 8 years have been very good about the Christmas Day. Do you know, they have in general just kept it then. They've maybe seen grandparents in the morning or whatever, and they've kept it. But kind Christmas is much bigger than one day. And I think we're all really guilty. We're all really guilty. I mean, already, you know, you're going in the shops, sometimes October, and already there's the chat. And then who doesn't, do you know, ask a child what they want from Santa? Do you know, fairly early on, any child you're meeting, definitely December, possibly even November, that's the chat. So it's really difficult to, and I think it's not about saying to folk, do you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. But I think it's the same as when we think back to the funneling, that there will be days where you maybe think, oh, this has had an effect, quite a negative one, so I need to pull it back, and that's absolutely okay. But there'll probably be quite a lot of examples of that, especially in the December build-up.
Absolutely. And when you're saying you need to pull it back, are you talking about kind of families just taking a pause, realising that children are feeling a little bit overwhelmed?
And why they are. It's not that they're... you know, playing up, or suddenly that it may, a lot of time folk will put it down to, you know, they're a wee bit older, they're maybe a wee bit more settled in nursery or whatever. Or sometimes if they have actually been to various Christmas parties, you know yourself, Santa gives the present there. Do you know, I have had folk many years ago say, I wonder if they're just, because they're being, you know, spoiled, they're getting too much.
Yeah.
And I think it is just thinking about, let's think about their last Christmas, the Christmas before, what this would bring up for us if we were
Absolutely.
in a similar situation, and that unpredictability. I mean, as you say, even once you've done a Christmas with someone else or another family, your next again one, you're thinking, what's this going to be like then?
Yeah.
Do you know, those are
Absolutely.
do you know, what do I take? What do I not take? What time are they going to eat? I mean, everything is so different when you speak to folk.
Different.
Queen's speech, how presents before church, you know, after church meal. Some folk eat at 2:00, some folk eat at 5. Do you know, again, it's a day, it's different.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing that I definitely, for me personally, when I think about other Christmases I've been to, I just think, you're all getting this wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't know how to do Christmas. There's a very set way of doing it. It's what my family do. Why are you doing it wrong? And I think it is something we can all relate to. We all kind of do have a set idea. And there's something really scary and unsettling about knowing that there's a big event coming and not knowing what it looks like. I guess the other thing I was thinking about, though, is Christmas, the kind of aftermath is also a really good time for kind of grounding some of that permanence, isn't it?
Yes,
you know,
definitely.
especially these younger children who aren't very good at, you know, well, they've got no concept of time, but they do maybe have a concept of an event, and it's quite a good opportunity to be saying, next Christmas, when you're here with us, shall we do the same? You know, I think that's kind of a nice part of the aftermath in amongst some of the chaos.
Yeah, because I do remember someone saying to me, oh, we probably just did it the same. And actually, again, they would have said, oh, well, they don't know the time. But what they do know is that they don't, in the family they were with before, they didn't wait. Do you know, when they got up in the morning, they opened the presents.
Yeah.
Actually, in another family that I worked with, that wasn't the tradition. Do you know, so, and I think if kids have been in a while, you've already, if they've moved in even at the beginning of that year, you've got a situation where you've went through the bit where they're, you know, continually asking for foster carers and stuff, and then you've maybe had 6 months in between where there's not been a lot of that. You may well get that again, you know, disturbed sleep, you know, just being off, you know, a bit more. I mean, that particular child I was speaking about last year, there was a lot of no's. Do you know, no to anything, even things that they would have really liked.
Would you like a candy cane? No.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was like. Yeah, just, you know, totally out of character. Yeah. But I envisage there will be a lot of thought about the foster carers anyway.
Yeah.
And that, you know, these things then come up again, and it can feel like a step back for folk when it should be the most joyous time for them. And that's difficult.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. But again, it's like, I really like the example you're using about thinking about people who've lost someone. You know, you could be sharing a special, you know, a special Christmas with someone that's really special for you, but actually, you know, for them, they lost a parent recently, or, you know, they lost a sibling or something like that. And actually, in those situations, you would be really mindful of that, and you'd be really thoughtful about it, and it wouldn't ruin any of it for you. And I think sometimes we need to kind of bear that in mind with just the huge amounts of loss many of these children kind of come with, don't they? Just in terms of thinking about.
Yeah, and I think loss isn't always, I mean, think of George Michael, that Last Christmas song. Do you know, this Christmas evokes those messages and triggers about last year. All the memories are coming up of last year, God rest his soul. Yeah. Do you know, that sort of thing, that is what happens inevitably. Even when you're chatting with folk, you will be speaking about, just automatically, do you know, about last Christmas. Yeah. And even for children, they weren't there last year. Do you know, if there's other kids or other kids in the family, they actually weren't there. That's difficult for kids.
Yeah. This is what we always do. You know, you think you're explaining something, you think you're giving them a thing, but actually, just by saying that sentence, it's actually excluding them a little bit. It's kind of, it's pointing out you're a little bit different, and nobody means to do that, but that's how it can be taken, can't it? We always do this. Well, I didn't know that. So, you know, is there something about me that is different here?
It's like, you're then excluded from that by the mere fact that it's just, you know, bringing up that you weren't there. And I always say to folk, you know, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I just think that keep your expectations fairly low the first year, and always the second year is much better. I mean, without a doubt. Absolutely.
Build your own traditions.
Yeah.
Start them.
Yeah.
And and again, back to that kind of thinking about the permanent, saying, this is what we will do every year. Like,
Yes.
we're in the
Yes.
present, and I can't wait to do this next year with you too. It's, work
Yeah.
out. And maybe what the thing for you is really small and low key, but actually that's probably going to be a really special thing for the next 10, 15 years for that child.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember saying to someone, you've took a lot of photos this Christmas, take a lot next year, and even if on the surface, there's not, by that point, you've maybe went through quite a bit to get there, but actually on the day. But I think you can often tell by looking at the child's face and the photos from one year
Yeah.
to the
Doing
second
it.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like any first. A first is always really difficult for so many reasons that we spoke about. Whereas just the mere fact that by the next again Christmas, they will know there's predictability, they also will be much more settled, but they'll then be able to discuss and they'll be involved in the chat about the year before.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'll feel completely, this is what we do together as a family.
Yeah.
It's how we do Christmas. And maybe
Mhm.
part of that is part of your Christmas thing for some children will be very much about marking some of those losses and including
Yeah.
all those people who can't
Mhm.
be with you as part of that, remembering, making space to talk about, birth
Yeah.
family and foster families and all that kind of things. Maybe
Mhm.
it might not be on Christmas Day itself, but like you say, it's kind of around that time, just thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So have you got what are the kind of top tips that you would kind of give to your families around this time of year?
Yeah, say don't overwhelm in
Yeah,
terms of the folk that you're meeting up with. I know that's difficult, but try and space it out, or even I know folk maybe want to see the child, but maybe you could meet friends out with a lot of the time.
yeah,
Just to keep it more normal, if you like, and just sort of, as you say, acknowledge, folk
yeah,
from the past and give as much information in terms of what is going to happen.
yeah,
That
yeah. Make it
predictability.
predictable. Yeah,
Yeah, and think about, most folk are still at that point in touch with foster carers. Ask them how it was. What
yeah,
was their traditions? Because
yeah,
again, like we, folk move in over the transition and they learn the routine there. This
yeah,
is a very different routine.
yeah, yeah,
So, and it's the first again. So I don't think it's a bad thing to be asking about, well, how do you do Christmas? And most parents wouldn't have an issue with adapting for that reason.
absolutely. Yeah,
And try and keep your family at bay in terms of not overwhelming with gifts, because I think there is, because they're aware they've missed a lot of Christmases. So it's maybe
yeah,
not even like other grandchildren.
yeah. It's
This
like
is,
compensating. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And friends, I think, are guilty of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like it's
Yeah,
like we were saying before, it's from such a nice place, isn't
it
it?
is. Yeah, yeah,
It's and I
yeah.
think that's one of the things that can be really difficult. You're trying to navigate those
Mhm.
well-meaning intentions of your family and friends without just getting on their nerves, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it helps to be like my really difficult, annoying social worker Amanda says.
yeah. And actually, I'm not saying anybody they're going to have a rubbish Christmas.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is it's going to be different, and it will be very different from the ones you'll have in the future. But we just need to keep being mindful. So going back to when the child moved and all of these things, just
yeah,
putting that hat on again, because
yeah,
we do move on, especially if there's been quite a lot of time. I mean, they may have moved in the January. So,
yeah,
it's quite easy to forget.
yeah.
Actually, this is your first. I mean, I think your first with anything is
Be
difficult.
tricky. And
Yeah.
what about for those families where maybe it's not their first, maybe it's their kind of third, fourth, fifth Christmas, but
Hmm.
I guess, you were saying at the beginning how we all just settle into our own routines and we forget, don't we? And
Yeah.
actually, I think
Yeah.
that's something else we see, maybe
Yeah.
it's the fifth Christmas and you kind of,
Yeah. What's that about?
what's that about?
Yeah, and I think that's the
Exactly.
thing. There's not always going to be an answer. It
Yeah.
could be, they could be at school with someone who's in foster care, adopted, or parents are even separated, and they're going to have such a special contact with, it could be a parent or an important family member or whatever, and it's just brought that up for them at that point. And again, you know, that they could be struggling with that.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to forget that even if you're kind of 5 years down the line, you know, some children just thrive on kind of predictability and routine. And even though Christmas itself, maybe they now know what the family traditions look like, but actually no one's predicting how the school is going to be, or you know, what the shopping centre is going to be like when it's completely overcrowded, and you know, and parties that you might be invited to and that kind of stuff. So it is just a time, isn't it, where there's all this mixture of stuff, and there's expectations to be happy, I think.
Absolutely. And again, your family have done the low key and kept it be year one. Actually, year 2 and 3, they're going for it. Do you know, like, we're making up for that year as well. Do you know? So, yeah, it can be. I mean, it's always going to be, I think, a difficult to a certain degree, and it'll invoke memories and stuff. But I think overall it is, I mean, same as birthdays, all these sort of occasions that will trigger, is just trying to not overwhelm and keep it lower key, even if we're feeling that's what we think the child needs. And that's when you're saying it comes from a good place, that's exactly it. It's to make up for all of those years that you've not been with them. Do you know? Or maybe things have been difficult for them as well.
Do you know? Yeah, they've had a really tough time at school. They've been really brave about various different things, and do you know what? We're going to make this the best Christmas ever. Why aren't they appreciating it? Actually, because it's all a bit too much. It's all just a bit too much. So if there's one final thing apart from Merry Christmas that you could give as a message to our families, what would that be?
It would be that I think you can still have a really good Christmas by just simply being together. I mean, that's really what's important. It's to, do you know, oh God, I'm bringing a tear to my eye here. Do you know, but it is, that is actually what it is for children. All these things are lovely, but they're not the main thing. The main thing is just enjoy the time together. It's, you know, such a shared memory that you'll always have that first Christmas. And that's the important thing.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda. I hope you have a lovely Christmas with not too many surprises.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.